And now it's time for the real news with your host, Farron.
Hello today and welcome to the Real News, your weekly call-in broadcast where we discuss current events and politics. Today our guest is Robert Wilcox, author of a new book, Target Patton. He will join us after the first break. Very interesting week this week. We have witnessed the BART police execute an unarmed American. Oscar Grant is his real name. The media likes to just refer to him as a victim. Oscar Grant is the man murdered by the BART police in Oakland, California in cold blood. And now there are riots and protests over this murder. We have the video of this shooting on our website, therealnewsradio.com, featured video 5 if you'd like to see that. We will discuss this when we go to our news. Our economy continues to spiral into the abyss, and Obama continues to fill his administration with the same old Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, corrupt sellouts as usual. The big change thus far is a melody of musical chairs, same faces, just different positions. But as you know, I consider the president but a puppet of the global elite. Before we let Mr. Bush leave office, a president who has lied us into 2 unconstitutional wars, has wasted trillions on these useless wars, has accumulated more debt than all other presidents combined, has killed over 1 million innocent Iraqis, and under his watch has piloted our economy into the biggest collapse since 1929. And I have the right to say these things because, shamefully, I voted for this man in 2001, but I hate to admit it. But I want to announce there is time, a short time, for Mr. Bush to actually do something right before he leaves office. Pardon the border guards, Ramos and Copian now, Mr. Bush. I want to comment on something sent to me by listener Terry. What do drug dealers, carjackers, moonshiners, embezzlers, bootleggers, tax evaders, counterfeiters, union bombers, army deserters, bank robbers, and arsonists all have in common? They've all been pardoned by President George W. Bush under the authority granted him in Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution. But he still refuses to pardon 2 wrongly convicted border guard patrol heroes. The list of people that President Bush has pardoned as president is daunting and full of almost every manner of criminal imaginable. I've only mentioned a few of them, but there's actually nearly 200 people that has been granted pardons. Now let's remember, Mr. Bush campaigned as a compassionate conservative. What a great line to sway the Christian right into voting for him, and they did. I haven't seen him do one thing compassionate, and he for darn sure isn't conservative, especially financially. But he has a chance now to do one thing right before he leaves office. Pardon the border guards now, Mr. Bush. I call on everyone to call or write immediately to your congresswoman, senators, the White House, local paper, make a sign, do anything, but do something. Pardon the border guards now, Mr. Bush. And if you don't, may your legacy in history be one of a disgrace to humanity. We have a lot of news to cover this week, and I want to discuss the changes on our local tax filing forms of 2009, for one thing, brought forth to us by a listener. And this is what I want this broadcast to be, information sent to us by concerned listeners like Dave. And later we will go to the phones and take your calls. Let's discuss that day before yesterday, Obama stated this week that the recession may last for years. I think that is, by definition, a depression for those who can connect the dots. But now let's turn to Brian to lead us into our first news segment. And Brian, do you have any thoughts on the pardon before you get started? Would you like to make a prediction? And also, your report last week on selling of our infrastructure was really good. We got a lot of response. I think a lot of people really enjoyed that, so good job.
Absolutely, that's a phenomenal story that most people, of course, will never hear on mainstream media. On the border guards, I personally doubt President Bush will pardon them because, I mean, that would obviously be what he should do, which he's disappointed me every single time in the past 8 years, so why should this be any different? I'm optimistic, but realistic at the same time. Speaking of connecting the dots here, earlier this week I was going to look for an economic article to read to give you some better picture of the state of the economy, but rather than find any one specific article, I found that there was so many articles. I'll just read the headlines and that should give you a good idea what's going on. And this is mainstream media. This was just headlines from Wednesday, this past Wednesday, January 7th. New York Times, debt collectors find ordinary Americans have been bled dry. UK Guardian, Americans may be eliminating 1 million jobs a month by spring. Wall Street Journal, people pulling up to pawn shops in Cadillacs and BMWs. Washington Post, college degree, no shield as jobs slashed left to right. San Francisco Chronicle, in brutal economy, people selling burial plots. Bloomberg, U.S. auto sales plunged 36% in December, now at a 16-year low. MSNBC, Toyota to halt auto production due to plunging demand for cars. New York Times, automakers fear a permanently new low level of auto sales. New York Times, end of the financial world as we know it. Los Angeles Times, U.S. consumer bankruptcies surged 1/3 in 2008. Private sector shed 693,000 jobs in December. Reuters. Federal Reserve minutes detail fear of a deflationary spiral. Chicago Tribune. Fed predicts economy will get worse. CNNmoney.com. Meltdown 101. What shows up in the Fed minutes? The Associated Press. Fed. Economic woes will last despite radical moves. The Associated Press. Unemployment reaches record high. The Lexington Dispatch, North Carolina. Davidson County's unemployment rate jumped to an 18-year record high in November 2008 to 9.3%. This is Davidson County, North Carolina. China warns economic woes could trigger major unrest. China Daily. Unemployment website phone line slowed to crawl. MSNBC. New York Times. This looks like the beginning of a second Great Depression. Washington Post. Post-Christmas sales not enough to stop retail collapse. And again, folks, this was just Wednesday's headlines. Unbelievable. And just to elaborate on one of those, state unemployment claims systems overwhelmed. Systems in New York, North Carolina, and Ohio were shut down completely by technical glitches and heavy volume. And labor officials in several other states are reporting higher than normal use. North Carolina's website crashed twice this week under a rush of claims as the state set one-day records for both the amount of benefits paid and the number of transactions. Unbelievable. Here's another one. Bank of England policymaker predicts unprecedented dollar collapse. And this is something we always talk about here on the Real News, the imminent collapse of the U.S. dollar. It's a simple, you don't have to be an economist to understand the more of something you have,
the less it's worth. And we started this on March 1st, long before this became headline news. And we took some criticism for getting out front and saying the economy was going to collapse. And lo and behold, abracadabra, here she is.
Writing's on the wall, folks. I mean, we're not
We're just telling you what the news is and seeing it forthcoming. I mean, it was reported by David Walker, Ron Paul. It was in a lot of the press, just not the mainstream puppet press. But now they can't. I guess they can't turn a blind eye to what they're having to report, because anybody that looks around, reads a local headline,
especially people that are unemployed and have a lot of time on their hands right now.
And they're everywhere here in Iredell County, unfortunately.
This was by Steve Watson at Infowars.net, Tuesday, January 6, 2009. A former member of the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee has predicted a massive collapse of the dollar within the next 2 to 5 years, warning that a government increase in spending under President-elect Obama could be disastrous. William Buter, who served the Bank of England from June 1997 to May 2000, has stated that he expects to see the plug pulled from under the dollar as foreign investors turn away from the dollar and other U.S.-backed assets, including government bonds. Writing for the Financial Times, Buter, now a professor with the London School of Economics European Institute, comments, quote, "There will be, before long, my best guess is between 2 and 5 years from now, a global dumping of U.S. dollar assets, including U.S. government assets. Old habits die hard. The U.S. dollar and U.S. Treasury bills and bonds are still viewed as a safe haven by many, but learning takes place," unquote. Buter, who has previously advised the World Bank, the IMF, and the European Commission, points out that the dollar has managed to stay afloat due to the misguided notion that the U.S. can make more capital on overseas investments and interest than foreign investors can make on U.S. assets, a hypothesis that economists have referred